Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the pen tool and anchor points. You're going to learn what that means and how you can use them to help you create your logo in Adobe Illustrator. Ideally, jumping into Illustrator is not going to be your first step. It is so much easier to figure it out all on paper, your sketching, your ideation, your experimentation. You should do a lot of research before and then jump into Illustrator because it's so much easier to figure it out on paper and get a really good idea of what you want to create and then take it into Illustrator rather than trying to start from scratch. Just open up Illustrator and go from nothing. So hopefully by this point you've already done a lot of sketching so that we can just start creating. Alright, so let's start off by talking about the pen tool. The pen tool is probably my best friend in Adobe Illustrator. I use it all the time. To get to it, you're going to come over here, click on this little pen icon, or you can just hit P on your keyboard. I like to use the keyboard shortcuts because it just makes everything go a lot faster, but if you want to go over and click on things over on the toolbar, you can, but it's way better to use the keyboard shortcuts. So basically what the pen tool does is it allows you to draw shapes using anchor points. So once you have the pen tool selected, you just click once to create your first anchor point, and then you can just continue clicking to add more anchor points and add corners to your shape. If you want to add curves rather than sharp corners, all you have to do is click and drag before you let go, and it creates these handles that allows you to make a curve rather than an angle. To create an anchor point that's directly in line with another anchor point, I'll click here. Let's say I want it to be over here, but I want to make sure it's directly in line with it. Just hold down Shift, and that'll make sure that it's directly in line. So I hold down Shift, and then I click. I can do the same thing up here, Shift and click, and that'll give me an exact straight line and a right angle right there. Now to close off our shape, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to find my very first anchor point and hover over it, and you can see that it's got this little circle next to it. That's telling me that clicking there will close the shape. So I'll click there, and now I have a closed off shape that I can use in my design. So now that I have my closed off shape, if I want to move it, I'm going to use the selection tool. We talked about that a little bit last time. It's this little arrow right here. You can also get to it by clicking V on your keyboard or hitting V on your keyboard. This allows me to then move my shape wherever I want to. I can also resize it by clicking on one of these. This bounding box right here is what it's called. And I can do this way to go from the corner. I can go this way if I just want to do, oops, there we go. If I just want to go that way. But as you can see, it kind of distorts the shape. It doesn't keep its same proportions as I enlarge it. So to keep it proportional, you're going to hold Shift and click on the corner to make sure it stays the same proportions as you move it larger or smaller. You can also rotate using this tool. By hovering over the corner, you can see it creates that curved arrow. So I just click and drag, and that allows me to rotate it whichever way I want. And you can do that from any of the corners. You may have noticed that there's another arrow right here that's white rather than black, and that's the direct selection tool. And we get to that by hitting A on the keyboard, or you can click on it over here. This allows me to edit individual anchor points within my shape. The selection tool that we used before that was black, I have to change the whole shape all at once. The white direct selection tool allows me to change individual anchor points within the shape. So if I click on the shape here, it then shows me all of these anchor points. Now I can click on any one of these anchor points and change it. So let's say I wanted to make that go in instead, or I wanted this one to come out a little bit more, and I can change it however I want. If I click on one that was a corner, I can see the handles again, and then I can then change those if I want it to go the other direction, or if I want to make it curve a little bit less. If you need to change just one of the handles at a time, so rather than changing the entire curve on an anchor point, if I just want to make this one stay the same and this one be a little bit smaller, all I have to do is hold Alt, and I can then just change that one handle on the anchor point. Another way that I can do that is with the anchor point conversion tool. You get that by holding Shift C. This allows me to take an anchor point that was once a corner and turn it into a curve by clicking and dragging. Oops, we'll go the other way. Or if I want to take it back to a sharp corner, all I have to do is click once and it takes it right back. A couple more tools that will be really useful are the plus and minus tools. So pretty simple to remember. The plus tool is the plus on the keyboard, the minus tool is the minus on the keyboard. You can also find them by clicking and holding on the pen tool, and then there's the add anchor point tool and the delete anchor point tool. So the add anchor point tool, it allows me to add anchor points within my shape, pretty self-explanatory. And that can be useful because maybe I don't want this to be a straight line. Maybe I want it to actually have a little peak right there. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if there wasn't an anchor point there. And then similarly with the minus tool, I can get rid of an anchor point. Now, it's important to understand that using the delete anchor point tool is different than selecting an anchor point and deleting it. I'll show you. So here we've got my shape and I click the delete anchor point. Now if we move my shape using the selection tool, you can see the outline is still complete. So it's still a closed off shape. So all it's done is kept the shape closed, but removed that anchor point from the shape. However, if I go in and use the direct selection tool and select an anchor point and then hit delete on my keyboard, now if I go to move this shape, you can see these lines, it's open up on the left there, which means it's not a closed off shape. So if I wanted to try and add an anchor point right here, it wouldn't let me because there's actually not a path there at all. So it's important to understand the difference and know when you want to delete an anchor point using the delete key or when you want to remove it using the delete anchor point tool. I know that sounds a little confusing, but it's really important to know what the difference is. So that is the pen tool and the anchor point tools in Adobe Illustrator. These are incredibly useful tools and they're great for doing any kind of freehand shape creation within Illustrator. Sometimes you can use the shape tools, but they just don't get you exactly where you want, and so it's nice to be able to know how to alter the shape and get it exactly the way that you want it. So I hope that this has been helpful. I know that this is something I use all the time, so I hope that you can start using it all the time too.